So I just want to welcome everybody this morning to Mending Threads. And this is your safe place and your stronghold for whole body wellness, a place where confidential information is discussed and as well as information for our communities. And today we're going to talk about faith, health, culture, and biblical beliefs that are necessary for transformation. And we have with us a person who is well known within the community, in the Houston community. We have, and I always mess up her last name, so I just call her Pastor Hilda. And we're going to let her correctly pronounce her name. But I had the opportunity at Trinity United Methodist Church to hear one of her sermons. And I was really taken because it was one of the few pastors that I understood to connect and recognize the importance of community and how we are involved and so integral to the community, and how the community reflects our belief in faith, not only the individual's belief in any type of faith, but also how the community accepts and transcends that faith. So we can look at our community and determine actually the healing that's necessary with our community. Yeah. So the thing that we're going to do today is we're going to listen to her, we're going to talk and ask her questions. But first we need to personally get to know, where does all this good stuff come from? So I want to welcome you, Pastor Hilda, and I want you to correctly pronounce your name for not only for me, but for our listening audience.
Well, good morning. Thank you so much, Dr. Lewis, for having me this morning. And actually, it's I think people put more into it. It's actually pronounced the way it's spelled. My name is Hilda Grad Nigo.
Okay.
You just want to put in letters and syllables, but it is only the English language, Grad Nigo. And yes, I'm excited. So it's actually, Dr. Lewis, I will tell you that one day one of my mentors asked the question, how did you get here? And that was such a profound question for me. And I had to pause for a minute, as scriptures say, Selah for a minute, and think about what she just asked me, right? How did I get here? But I believe I am here because it was God's plan for me to be here. And I am here because there was always a longing within me. I can look back over my life and look at, as you say, the threads, the mending threads that were being woven together for this beautiful masterpiece, or that God is still trying to create in the form of who I am and who he has made me to be. I have always loved people. I've always loved getting to know people's story. I'm that person that wants to know you. I don't want to know what you do. I don't want to know, who your, there's people say, who's your people, and work and all of that. But I believe there is power in learning people's story. If we look at Jesus, as he went about teaching, preaching, and healing, that was part of his ministry, to sit down and to break bread with people and to hear their story. That's where the parable stories come from. Think about, he created an environment for people to ask him the hard questions, right? And so learning people's story creates an environment for you to be able to connect with them in a way and on a level that's not the norm, especially in the world. And so I'm grateful that I am here, but I believe here is just the beginning of there. And I'm thankful for all of the people whose hands and fingers were involved in the threading and kneading and pulling and all of that. That has allowed me to be here today. So that's how I got here.
Yes. So I'm going to then, since we're talking about faith, health, and culture. So it would be important in talking about your needing and the threat, those most powerful moments
Yeah,
that you could remember
yeah,
um, in your life that really brought about your transformation or your travel, your getting here.
yeah.
So
So
I was
go ahead. I'm sorry. Go
no,
ahead.
no, no. Go on. Yes, yes, ma'am.
So there were pit stops along the way. I think that there are we all talk about the valleys and the mountaintops and all of that. I had all of them. I've had some valleys that I never thought I'd see another mountain, and
Yes,
I've had some mountaintops that were so short lived that I couldn't even remember them in the valley. Right. So I believe all of those experiences for myself personally, I don't mind sharing. I always tell people that's the freedom I have in being able to tell my story. One of them I can remember was in a divorce when I had got when I divorced my son's father, and it was so devastating for me because all my friends, my girlfriends, were all wanting and desiring to, go to these schools and have these great jobs and live in these fancy homes. And all I ever said, even growing up, and still to this day, was, "I just want a family,"
yes.
and that was because I grew up around family. Family is truly in my DNA, and it was so devastating to me that I am a daddy's girl. My sister and I are both, she's gone on to be with the Lord, but I was so devastated that the man that I esteemed high, who was my hero, I could not bring myself to face him because I felt like I had not only failed him, but I had failed the family.
Mhm.
Because divorce was just not something that you did in our family.
That's right.
Right?
Yes, yes.
So here I was, I broke the mold like I was the first Dr. Lewis.
Kind of like the outcast or
Oh
something,
my
something that
God.
I know.
I was very devastated, but I will never forget the power of my father's words, just like our heavenly Father. And he came to me and he said to me, "This is not who you are. This is what has happened. And they're two
Yes,
different things. And you're going to be okay. We're going to be okay." And that was probably one of, I call, a very big cracking in my life, because sometimes I do believe that sometimes we need to be, as we like to say, broken to be healed.
yes, yes.
And that was definitely a broken moment for me.
There
Um,
was there's a little thing that I really, a chapter in Purpose Driven Life that I really like, and it's
yeah,
called Transformed by Trouble.
yes,
I think that that is the strongest chapter, and
yeah,
it just encapsulates just what you're saying. Like how are you going to get there if you don't have enough of that?
yes.
That helps you to mirror and see.
Exactly. And so I'd probably say the next big thing was in 2018. Whew, my best friend, my side chick, my sister, confidant, all of that, and a bag of chips passed away. And
Oh wow!
and I don't know if you remember. I believe it was the oldest king daughter when she talked about her father dying. She said there was a hole in her soul,
That's right. Yes.
and I came to not only hear what she was saying, but I came to understand what she.
And what it is, I'll share with you that when my daughter died,
Mhm.
she was like 20 something years old.
Ah,
And that hole I can still feel. So when a person speaks of that hole is there.
it is,
It almost physically seems that it's there.
yeah.
Mhm.
There, it was definitely a hole in my soul. But I tell you, through faith and
Mhm.
healing, because that is a people. we love these cliches. Oh, time heals all wounds. That's not true.
No, no,
Time does not heal
it
all.
helps, but it doesn't do it all by itself. Yes,
Yeah, and I believe there are just some healings, Dr. Lewis, that we want that are process. And so I believe every day we're getting up, we're being healed. We're either being healed or we continue to stay in our infirmities, right? Um,
yes,
that's why God says, I would have that you would choose life. Well, to choose life means to accept the responsibility to do what I need to do to live through this day, right? And to live it in to the best of my abilities, right? But there is a response that is needed from me to do that. And so, even in ministry and even in my nonprofit, that is one of the things we encourage. I encourage women to do is that they gotta keep moving. You gotta keep moving. The moment you stop moving, um, you lose the resilience, you lose the
yes,
zeal, the desire, the appetite for life. But when we choose life, that means that we choose to respond by doing what is necessary. So I'm grateful for that.
yes. And you're right on when you're talking about, as you see, I should have probably retired by now, but I think I'm being. If I would fall into the norm, I would not be sitting here this morning with you. But one of the things that I realized is that so I took this trip to China at one time, and I got a chance to interview people to see culturally, and we're going to bring it up again later on in the show because we have somebody that's going to help us look at it. So when you talk, and I want to say this, is that I learned something about the difference between us here in America and different other countries like Africa and China and whatever about what you do when you're a certain age and how do you express yourself,
Mhm,
and when do you as a woman stop doing things, and so this thing about you not stopping, you might change a direction,
mhm,
but you really or have a different emphasis, but you must, whatever God has led you to do, you must make sure that you do that as a part of your community legacy and your legacy.
right.
And you will have meet all kinds, and this is what was taught to me. You'll have all these roads and all these things to do, but you must follow. I have friends that tell me you need to stop. You need to stop. And then when I ask, I said, do you ask a poet to stop writing poetry?
Exactly.
Do you ask a musician to stop playing?
Yeah.
Do you ask the artist to stop painting? So how is it that who needs to stop and when?
And
Okay, so
how do you stop what you're passionate about? Where is the end?
mhm,
The purpose and the calling. There is no end to our call. I said my end to my call is when God calls me home.
that's right. That's right. And as long as you enjoy what you're doing and it brings peace, yes, yes, yes.
Yeah.
So one of the things that you I wanted to look at because you have gone through some things. So when you look at faith health and we began to look at transformation of biblical beliefs, can you share um, culturally or biblically the things? Because one of the things for transformation to occur, one must hold on to whatever their beliefs are,
Yeah.
okay, and become real crystal clear about them. And so
Yeah.
I wanted to hear if you could share, because we'll be bringing other churches on this.
Right.
What is this faith health thing that we're going to hold on to? What
Uh,
are the biblical beliefs or the promises? What are those things that bring up from your point of view? If we
My
could
point of view.
explore, yes, your
Yes.
experience, yes. Mhm.
Yeah, so I'm just going to talk a little bit about it. I'm sure those who are coming on have a more in-depth theological perspective and consensus about all of this. But I, when you were teeing up yesterday about the what we were going to talk about this morning, I began to ponder and think about it, and especially when it comes to our communities. especially in the African American communities, when you think about faith and when you think about health, both of them have a realm. And I mean, what I mean by that is, we know faith is only required or even works in our spiritual realm, right? Or in the spiritual part of us, whereas health is a physical evidence of something. Faith is a spiritual evidence, right? And so there is a correlation or a balance of the both, and both are needed. Health is needed for our physical bodies, and faith is needed for our spiritual bodies, right? For our spiritual life. Health is needed for our physical life. And when any one of those is out of balance or out of whack, they both are unable to operate at their fullest
Capacity.
that capacity, correct? Um,
Hmm.
and so I begin to think about this thing, faith and health, because we have been talking about this for a while, Dr. West. But I think it comes back down to, um, when we think about the culture, you know, uh, I have to kind of go back, to into history, because you gotta bring some of what was into what is, right. Even biblically, we can't have the New Testament without the Old Testament, correct? So we can't have where we are without where we've been, and where we've
Yes.
been as a people has consisted of a lot of oppression, a lot of brokenness, and which has all derived out of trust that has been broken. African American people are still struggling with trust. We
Yeah.
don't trust our systems. We don't trust our governments. When people come into our communities, we don't trust what they say, because in our minds, all we can remember is the oppression, the injustices, and all of those things that came with your voice.
The
Right?
pain. Yes. Yes.
So,
Hmm.
even what you have to, your voice represents everything bad for me, right? And so when that trust is broken, then faith is diminished. So not only do I not trust you, but then you now tell me to have faith in what you represent, right? And I can't do that. And I believe this is kind of where the defining line is, where we have a lot of people who, or we like to say, the church is part of the community, and the community, the church is the community, and communities rely on churches. There should be a partnership between the two. But until we can get back to trusting one another,
Yes.
that's never going to happen. And
Yes.
it is the fault of both. It is the fault of the church, and it is the fault of the community. And that is the fault of the church because, we built these walls and we told you you had to obey by these systems. We told you if you did it this way, it only worked. But if you did it your way, it wasn't going to work. So there's all these biases and segregations and all of these things. But when the trust was broken, then the faith diminished, then the fear rose, right? So
Yes.
many of our people are living out of the fear that prohibits the transformation that is required, not
Yes.
only physically, but in their minds, in their souls, in their mental capacities, in their emotional capacities. And so they have these blockers up. And so here we are, we have people who, even after this pandemic, we had a discussion. Our DS had a call with the pastors, and they were all talking about coming back into the church, and they needed gloves and all these PPE. And I'm listening, and I'm thinking, are they in the same time zone I'm in?
I know.
I came off of mute and I said, I'm a local pastor. I get it. But you guys do realize that the people who left our churches in March are not going to be the same people that come back into our doors. They are going to be mentally broken, emotionally broken. They're going to be
Yes.
physically tired. I said,
Right.
they are.
And different expectations of what needs to go on. And that's
You
yes.
you cannot even fathom or think you will be able to offer them the same thing you've been offered them. Because first of all, it will not. I said they will come and they will go just as fast as they come,
They
right?
can.
Because I believe we are in the time of where even the church is going to have to readjust and align and understand this faith thing is real, but faith is needed to work with the health of people. And so,
Yes.
as I pray for you, I'm also going to say you need counseling.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
Yes.
as I sit and coach your marriage, I'm going to say you need counseling, right?
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
if you are emotionally wrecked, I'm going to pray for you, but I'm going to tell you, look, you need to rest, right?
Yes.
If you're coming in and I see that your face is blue and purple, I'm not going to tell you, well, we're going to be praying for you. I'm going to tell you, do you need a shelter? Can I get you some
Right.
help?
Yes.
Can I
Yes.
get you
Yes.
some assistance? We're going to have to stop having this veil in between what we, the church, believes. Oh no, that's not our responsibility. It is totally our responsibility. Jesus went about healing, went about teaching, preaching, and healing.
Yes.
Right? That was healing, was not just an osmosis or something he did on the weekend or on a certain, that was part of who he was. And so our responsibilities as pastors and ministers in the community has to be more than um, feeding them.
Yes.
It has to be
Pastor
providing the
Hilda.
services that they need, right?
Yes, it is so refreshing we have what they call the the WRC Faith Health Initiative. So I don't know how it happened. Well, I guess I should say this. I was led to do this something. Now listen, in 2002, but it's going to continue as you're speaking now because somehow we're not able to translate what we're being asked to do to the realities. Even in Bible study, you can pose a question, and if that question is posed, it is thought or believed to be outside of the boundaries of what that lesson is about. It is almost like you're proposing to a disbelief to the word when you say, how do you actually use this in this circumstance? They'll go like, well, you have to believe in whatever. But the person who's in pain wants to hear something that you're going to do. So now this is way ahead of time now in 2002 when
Right.
when we brought this faith. They don't want to hear, but now they just might what you're saying. They might be ready
It's not
now.
right. We have to be ready.
We have to be ready.
Have
And
to
we
be.
had a little time. And I think we're given some opportunities because we had to come out of the church and come out and regroup.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, now let's see if we can come together. So you're right on time.
I
You're
think
right on
all of
target.
our systems are having to regroup. Our schools are having
Our
to regroup.
schools, everything,
Everybody's having to regroup because
families.
it's, you
Yes,
know what was the missing part out of all of this is the compassion for people. And God is bringing back his compassion
passion,
for people. He's
caring, and whatever.
He is bringing back the compassion. Look, we can do all this, what we want to do, but if we don't have compassion for people in their
Yes,
pain, in their hurt, in their lack,
yes.
it takes compassion to realign schools. It takes compassion to be the church when you can't go into four walls, right?
And
Exactly.
how we do it is going to bring back the trust. If we bring it back connected to each other, listening to each other, and supporting each other, then we can do it. But if we bring it back in terms of anger, competition, what do you call it? struggle, this kind of thing, then it is going to reset the mold in a similar fashion as it was. And we're
Right.
going to have escalation of healing, of sickness, and you're just so right on.
Think
So
about
now,
how everything is being minimized to small groups in
yes,
every situation, in our churches, in our
yes,
schools, in our homes. That was the original intent, right? The small
yes,
groups came together. Why? Because you could give more attention. You can hear better. You can be more
yes,
compassionate better. When a teacher has 30 some kids in a classroom and she's trying to be able to teach and make sure every child is learning up to a level, that is hard. But now guess what? We're going to have social distancing, so every teacher is going to have what, 6 8 children.
almost back to a one-room schoolhouse.
Almost like a one-room schoolhouse.
Schoolhouse, there we go.
We're
Uh,
bringing back, God is allowing the compassion to come back.
yes, yes, yes. Well, you're so good. Now we're going to bring on uh, Pastor Alan Walker from Texas Southern University. He's with the Urban Research and Resource Center, and he is actually pulling together data over a period of time and research around culture. And also, I'll say he's also a pastor. Okay. And so now he has this balance um, that we've been speaking about. And we want him to chime in and help us begin to understand this thing about trust and this thing about compassion and how we can look at this from a cultural point of view and a biblical point of view so
Mhm.
we can discuss this morning and move in a direction, because the outcome we want to have is that we're going to continue these talks until we can come out with an action plan that really has some action, some meaning to bring about transformation. Okay, so welcome this morning. Good morning.
Good
Okay,
morning,
we're on with Pastor Hilda Graningo,
Radnigo.
Grandigo, and so this is and we've already introduced Dr. Walker, and I call him Walker. So could you let us know what you thought about what we were talking about this morning?
Man, that's a heck of a question. Y'all were talking about so much.
I know we were, but we were talking about the faith health component for transformation and healing, and how that works for us as individuals and the community, and where we need to probably start and beginning to focus on this.
I had several thoughts. One, just thinking about what we need for this transformation. I
Yes,
think in our minds we need to focus on a journey towards becoming our best selves, our fullest, the most divine self. And so for that journey, what do we need? We need community. We need connection, relationships. There's, African sayings, I am because we are, therefore I am. To get spider webs together can take down a lion. There's more power. We can do more together than we can apart. We also need to reject a slave theology, and we have to, like our good pastor was just saying, we've got to get in and read and study and learn and grow, and we can't move forward unless we're willing to look back and learn lessons from the past. And one of those lessons is learning how theology was used to at least attempt to convince Black people that we were less than, that we need to be subservient to some other human rather than bending our knee to no one but our God. So we've got to reject that slave theology, because quiet as it's kept, a lot of that theology that was preached on the plantation is still being preached in 2020. And also, we've got to reject, and I love the way um, Pastor was breaking it down. We've got to reject a childlike faith that says God is going to do for us what God gave us the power to do for ourselves. That doesn't mean we don't believe in God. That doesn't mean we don't worship an almighty, omnipotent, omnipresent God. but it recognizes that God has endowed us with abilities to make decisions and choices, to show compassion, like Pastor was saying, to recognize that uh, service via the church is not simply about prayer. I just love what she was saying. Um, so we reject the slave theology, but we've also got to embrace and practice a theology of liberation. That's, I guess, kind of how I would describe what Pastor was saying, and embrace ongoing education. You know, one of my mentors, uh, his critique of the black church is, so far too often we leave our brains in the vestibules. Like we've got all this intelligence and knowledge, then we go into the church house and we don't we don't question anything. We're not willing to grow. We're not willing to take on new information and incorporate it into our faith walk. Because I think one of the dangers is faith has been uh, faith has been sold to us as something that is easy. If you say a scripture, if you listen to this gospel CD, if you do X, Y, or Z, boom, you've got faith. Faith is a wrestling your entire life, uh, and that's one of the things I think that has cheapened the life of Jesus and the life of others in the movement. They we act like everything they did was preordained. They knew the outcome, like Martin Luther King knew the outcome of his life, or um, Ida B. Wells knew what was going. No, every decision they made was just like the decisions that we make. We wrestle with, we make a decision, we question ourselves. We don't have support sometimes. We have support other times. It's a wrestling, and so faith is not easy. But also service. Service has got to be foundational to our faith walk. And I'll finally say this: connection to the ancestors. It, in the African tradition, it's not worshiping ancestors as if they are gods, but it's recognizing that the ancestors are a part of our community. That the same prayers that they prayed for us while they were in the land of the living, they're still praying those prayers. And they in the African view of the cosmos, our ancestors are still with us and still a part of our community and still willing and wanting to help us in our faith walk. And that came to mind because of the passing of Congressman John Lewis, the legendary C.T. Vivian, and some personal friends of mine in the Pan African Orthodox Christian Church in the shrine, Major Aswati, Mother Abeni. And then there are some biblical beliefs that I think we should tap into more, like the whole parable of the talents out of Matthew 25. The whole lesson of that story is you're not supposed to sit on what God has given you. You're always supposed to be growing and developing. That's the kind of church, that's the kind of teachings that the church has to give to the Black community. Our good pastor said, keep moving, keep moving. I think you said one of your mentors told you that whatever you do, keep moving. That is one of the most profound spiritual African teachings ever. Keep moving. And there's a story in the Bible, right? Exodus 14:15, where the children of Israel are trying to escape bondage, and they're right there at the banks of the Red Sea, and they're about to give up. They're talking about going back into slavery, and Moses brings this to the Lord, says, "Yo, I followed you here. What are we supposed to do?" And God's answer was, "Tell the children of Israel to march on, keep moving, even if moving forward looks doubtful, seems doubtful. Keep moving." And then Luke 4:18 through 19, where Jesus outlines his entire ministry, purpose, all that. He says, "The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to preach good news to the poor, recovery of sight to the blind, liberation for those in chains." It's interesting that everything that Jesus said he was about making life better on this side of the grave. Yeah. Using your God-given abilities, powers, passions, whatever, to make life better right now. If you do that, heaven's going to take care of itself. But we flip the script. We focus everything on the great by and by and do absolutely nothing about what's going on right here, right now. And then finally, and this blows my mind, because this, folk talk about their scriptural preachers or preaching from the word, but they never preach on this scripture, John 14:12, where Jesus said to his disciples, "What I can do, you can do, and even greater things shall you do." And that just goes right back to this idea that why are we sitting back waiting for God to do for us what God has given us the power to do for ourselves? And this is the last thing I'm saying because I know I've spoken way too long. This is the month of
No,
August.
you right on in there. You just helping us clarify what we discussing and what we're talking about.
I was just loving the conversation. I don't even know why y'all brought me on. I could have just sat back and could have had just a really good Tuesday morning listening to you two. But you asked for this, so
Yes,
here we
give
go.
it to me. Give it to me.
And this is the last thing I'm gonna say. This is the month of August, and August for Black folk has become sacred. There's this whole movement called Black August, and it was started in the early 1970s. Black political prisoners that were incarcerated freedom fighters, they chose to fast during the month of August, and a part of their fast was reading about their history and the history of other oppressed people. The horrible things that happened and how we have overcome and fought back through the centuries. And so from there, that expanded. And so now you have this whole Black millennial movement that celebrates Black August. And if you
Yes,
look throughout our history, it's incredible just so many of the markers of our story that happened during the month of August. But from there, grew out of something called the Night Out for Safety and Liberation, and this was founded by the Ella Baker Center for Human Rights out on the West Coast. Now, p- police departments, I think they founded something called the Night Out for Safety, but they focus specifically on police community relations. They focus on violence or crime prevention. But with this Black August mindset, we're like, well, safety for us is not simply crime prevention. Safety for us is stopping police violence against Black people. Safety for us is ending food deserts so that we have access to good food. Safety for us is childcare, it's access to health care. Safety for us is community. Safety for us is equal access to learning and educational opportunities. And so from this Black August grew this Night Out for Safety and Liberation. And they've been doing this for almost 10 years now. And I can give you some more information on it later, but there's a website for those that are interested in finding, book lists that for those who are serious about trying to develop a theology of liberation. You can learn about these great womanist ministers like your guest right here. Because there's this great line: Bishop Vashti McKenzie, Reverend Dr. Anita Weems, Reverend Dr. Teresa Fry Brown, Reverend Dr. Tracy Blackman, Reverend Dr. Stephanie Crumpton, Jacqueline Grant, Mama Mercy Amba Oduyoye. I'm sorry about that. But then there's other giants in our story who were ministers or part of the faith community that were doing what the good pastor was talking about, not simply praying for people, but directing them to the services that they need or creating those services themselves. People like the Reverend Albert B. Clegg Jr., Gayrod Wilmore, a great Black liberation theologian who just passed away recently, a couple of months ago. Marcus Mosiah Garvey, who does not get enough credit for the theological work that he did. And so I would suggest that we look at this month of August as an opportunity for us to do so much of the work that that your profound guest, I should say,
yes,
has challenged us to do.
yes. Well, I'm hoping that the information, as usual, that you're going to send it to us and you're going to post it on the Urban Research and Resource Center, and then you're going to send it to us so we could get it out. And what we had planned to do starting this month was begin to post pieces of information on the website and send it out to the different churches. and they will begin to post and respond to how they're using the information. One of the things that we're talking about, we started at Texas Southern, the outreach for transformation. We brought all of the churches together and leaders in the community and began to look at how to use the Mighty Faith Health Initiative to transform the pain within the community, the illness and whatever. So the outgrowth of that was the mending threads and some of the other things that we're doing and what you're speaking about today. And so this particular thought, along with some information that you're speaking about and some faith health information, will go to the church. And this very um, taping for this show will get to each church to send out with commentary. Okay, so the ones that are on this morning will begin the commentary and will put their logo in their presentation in the front of it and in the beginning. And then this will go out to the community so it can come back to us with different responses from their congregation and their community. So I wanted to say, you mentioned one of my persons was Basti Murphy McKenzie, who Bishop Basti Murphy
So
McKenzie,
wait a minute, wait. So you can say Vashon McKenzie, but you can't say Pastor Gradnigo? Come on now. Come on, Dr. Lewis.
well, it's something to be said in practice. Practice. I've had to say that Vasta, Bishop Vasta. I've had to say that a whole lot. So I'm going to work on. I'm going to work on
I love it.
but you got me on that. I'm gonna practice. So, because we'll be doing a lot of work, and I know that what you mentioned, Doc Walker, you mentioned that we needed to begin to look at action right now. What are we going to do now, and then how are we going to bring healing? And then we also mentioned the connection between faith and health, that must become crystal clear. And we must begin to speak to this as to how this is going to come about during our sermons. How are we going to feel freer to speak about the connection between mental health and diabetes, and between our prayers, mental health and diabetes, between our sermons that we hear, and how we're going to have action to heal people in the community. So we do something in the Mending Threads and the Imani Faith Health Initiative, working with churches. We do something called Stand Up. And so we go to the church, and each church decides what are they going to stand up for that day. And we have a whole service around commitment to standing up. And we must leave there that day doing something that we agreed to do. And we follow up with each other that's going to do it. So starting this month, on the 3rd of, we're asking all pastors to sign up, call in so that they can be on board. I think it's the 19th of this month, if I'm not mistaken. It's a Wednesday at 10 a.m. And we will be launching the mental health endorsement and training for pastors. Not that they need all that training, but each one will be training each other. And there will be a certification at the end for pastors to bring what they call healing the community. So they will get a state certification to be able to do that, but it's more the compassion, the caring, and implementing it in the community. Now, I know we're going to have a hard time. We're going to see. So we're asking to spread the word and get the pastors to sign on and to call us, to email ips.health1@gmail.com, to call 281-381-2276, because if we are committed, we must look at what you spoke about, Doc Walker, about the incarceration, the number of people, the illness. Why do we have the highest illness of diabetes and death within our communities? Why is it that we have this mental health that's being not discussed, and we must hide it? Why is it that we do not have elders in the community that we can speak with and trust? Why is it, all of those things we must address. So now instead of asking why, we're going to say what do we need to do to have what we need to heal ourselves and and persons in the community. So I thought in our last few minutes, we would brainstorm some of the things that we covered for our action plan. And so we know that an action plan says we're going to look at how we're going to do it, when we're going to do it. You see, at what time, how often, just brainstorming what we could do. So I'm going to close my mouth because I know I wrote down some of the things. So I love those scriptures that we could use. And we want to look at poetry. We want to look at what has to happen. Let's brainstorm some 10, at least some things that we can do to get started this month in August and continue whatever we need to continue.
I'll just go ahead and throw something out there. The first thing
Okay.
we need to do anytime there is a illness or a infirmity or anything that's opposite of wholeness, is the first thing is you have to admit that there's a problem. And I think a lot of our um, community leaders, including pastors and the likes, first need to admit that there is a need for um, services and or the likes. I thank you for talking even about the certification. Um, One of the things is being a pastor in an African American community is I realize that at the very moment that I think that all I need to be to this community is a pastor, I failed them. I failed them because
Mm-hmm.
that is not all they need, right?
Yes.
I am only a part of what they need. And if I am going to speak to the health, which is their wealth, if I'm going to speak to the wealth of this community, then I have to speak to the complete health of them, right? So if I'm willing to be the spiritual component for them, then I have to lock arms with the mental component. I have to lock arms with the the relational component. I have to lock arms with the emotional component. I can't go by myself, and I cannot be the only thing that they need. And I think the churches are going to have to realize that we are not the kingdoms of a community. We are not. We cannot act alone. We have to be as invested or vested into our communities in the grassroots, on the field, in the streets, along with those others who are actually trying to advocate as well. And I think when we do that, as Dr. Walker said, when we do that, when we come together and we understand that we are better together, stronger together, then our communities will be healthier, and will have the mindset to once again believe. And that I believe the faith part will just happen, right? Because there's one thing to, as I used to hear this saying that says, you can preach a sermon all day, but people respond more to the sermon you live, right, than the one you
Yes.
preach,
Yes.
right?
Mhm.
So, and I'll shut up. And Dr. Walker, you, uh,
You can keep going. I'll just throw in a few. Most I've already said. I think this Black August thing, just I would suggest people
I
research.
want to learn. I've never heard of that. Thank you for
Yeah,
that. I am
no
definitely
problem.
Yes.
going to look
No
into
They
that.
problem.
used to have something called August Quarterly, and yes, yes. So I
Never.
think we should.
Yeah, look up Black August,
I'm
and
going to do that. Yeah.
I know for the past few years there have been these a night out for safety and liberation happening all over the country. I don't know if it's still going on, especially with the need for physical distancing. We don't need to social distance. We
No,
need
we
to
don't need
physically distance, but we need to
exactly.
socially connect. Um, a minister friend of mine shared that one with me, so I'm stealing it from him. Um, we've got to fight epistemic violence. You know, the whole whitewashing of our history. We've got to make that an active part of not only our spiritual life, but just our life in general, learning about our own story.
Yeah.
So many good books. Reverend Dr. Kelly Brown Douglas wrote a book entitled Stand Your Ground, Black Bodies in the Justice of God. Powerful, powerful book. That's just one of 1,000 that I could suggest. Um, uh, get in community with, relationship with those that are doing the work that you want to do. I think there'd be more from the spiritual community willing to do what our good pastor was talking about if we saw the work being done, or if we recognize or realize just how much of a history we have of that. I'm a writer, and so one of the things that helps my writing is to read other writers,
Yeah.
Yes.
seeing their brilliance. Like one of my favorite fiction authors is Walter Mosley, because as a preacher, I can be very preachy, as you all have probably seen today. But Walter Mosley, he writes fiction, but he teaches Black history, and he engages in social commentary while telling these incredibly entertaining stories. I'm like, wow, he's preaching, but he's doing it in such a way that's just really engaging. Um, and I'm just saying that to say, if we see the examples of the work that needs to be done, if we see that people did it in the past, if we see people doing it now, that's why I say getting in community with our good pastor here and others that are doing the good work, I think it would give us more courage, more people more courage to step up and do the same thing.
I think we're right on. So I think that maybe we should, our plan is the first and the second week, and possibly the fifth week, we would begin to study history, and we would look at how that relates to biblical scripture and how it transcends into life. Those would be the themes that we're doing for the first, the second of the month, and the fifth weeks of any month. And then on the third and fourth, we're looking at, so you can look at that. We look at how to care on the third, how to become compassionate, how to actually transcend all of the issues and struggles with compassionate care and physical care and health care, those kinds of things. And on the fourth of any month, we look at culture also, but we're really looking at um, medical. For example, we have physicians that come on, and nurses that come on and
And
look at
that's the
those.
work. That's the
So
work.
what?
That's the work. I mean, Jesus
Yes,
provided food for those who are hungry,
yes, yes,
healing for those who are sick,
yes,
compassion for those who have been dogged out by society. Why
yes.
is this even a mystery? Why is this even a question? This is the faith. The faith is not ignoring the world
Ignoring.
simply so I can, you know, shoot off to heaven after I pass. Everything Jesus did is what you're talking about.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, yes. And there's one little missing piece. What you spoke about, one of you spoke about, and that somebody said we really need to get the church vested into the community, and we need to develop a relational component.
Yeah.
And so one of the things that's missing is what we're trying to do on the 19th, and that's the third uh, week, is to bring about how can we connect? How do we use what we have to understand and hear each other? How can we um, relate this to the community without threatening anyone? How can we bring them on and develop trust, really going through what we know and bringing guest people to come and talk about it with us, but we actually become a body to do that. And so that Wednesday, At 10 is that missing link, that missing component of how to lock arms, how to get rid of those things for wellness and healing. And so that's why we're whole body wellness. That's why we're looking at Imani Faith Health Initiative. So everybody comes into the circle,
And
comes
Doctor,
into the effort.
can I throw one last thing in
Sure,
too?
throw some in.
Talking about health, you know, I think a huge healer is learning our history. And, I love history. Always have. Not everyone does. But one way you can access history is by learning your own, your family history,
That's right.
talking to
Yes,
your parents and your grandparents, and just learning about people whose names may not be in those quote unquote history books, but because of the lives that they lived and the sacrifices they made, they allowed for you to be here, your siblings, they made a way out of no way. And that may be an entrance into, people taking history more, valuing history more.
Exactly.
yes. Well, I want to thank you all for being here this morning, and I know that we made a dent. I know we're rolling. The wheels are rolling and rolling and rolling. We started in January um, with some spiritual inclination and a movement to just get out there and to do it, and then to move it forward no matter what obstacle, because it's so important to look at the obstacles themselves, to see that that's also a map, a roadmap as to what needs to be done and how we're going to do it. And I know we have you, uh, Pastor Hilda Granigo,
Glad to
and
go. Glad to go.
Grandigo. That's what I'm gonna say, Grandigo.
Dr. Lewis say as some people call him, Pastor G. Just say Pastor.
Pastor G. Okay, that's good. That's good. That's a good escapism. Good, Pastor G. Okay, and then I'm so glad from Trinity United Methodist Church here in Houston, Texas, and we have Pastor Oswald Walker with the Urban Research and Resource Center at Texas Southern University,
Yes.
and we know that we're going to hear from him more, and also you will be hearing from Pastor Hilda coming up a lot in the future. So one of the things is that we're going to be looking at education, and I want you to get your hats on, you in the community, and to recognize that you have a role to play, and it is just not to listen. And that we're asking you to take charge right now, to call us at wrc-houston. Put your note in on our website. Call us at 281-381-2276. And we want to move forward, want to hear your ideas, and we want to hear your needs. And there are also people who need help in the community. We're taking up money, or you can sign on to help a family. And what we're doing is we're trying to get internet or hotspots for children within the schools who do not have internet service, so that they can be a part of this virtual learning environment coming up in the fall. So you can go to wrc-houston.com. You can put your name in and donate, um, or you can call us and make a pledge, and we can get your name to one of the schools that we are partnering with. And I'll look forward to hearing from you. Thank you. And I want to thank both of you for being on the show. And I want to thank all of you in the audience for listening to us. We're the Mending Threads Women's Resource Center with the WRC Imani Faith Health Initiative. And this is a transformation series, and we'll look forward to seeing you next Tuesday. You can, Tuesday evening at 7 p.m., you can go to www.houstonpublicaccesstv.com, and you'll be able to review the comments made, and you can also call us and get information and ask any questions. Thank you, and I look forward to seeing you all next week.
Thank you
Thank you.
again,
Thank
Dr.
both
Lewis.
of you for being us.